it's the biggest predictor and it's going to have the most correlation to sales velocity metrics. I've actually explained this to a couple of CMOs recently, and I explained to someone else on the podcast, and starting to really help people understand why we look at this in two ways. Because when we look at opportunity source, a lot of people think that we're running single touch attribution, and that's not at all what we're doing here. And so I want to talk through, we look at opportunity source, which is the main source that companies would use to define where a lead entered the pipeline or an account entered pipeline. And people are looking at it as if multi-touch attribution is an alternative, which my belief is that it's not, because multi-touch attribution blends all of the touch points together, tries to assign some percentage value to each touch point, but it doesn't help you guide strategy. And so let me talk through how we guide strategy using these two different points. So number one is the opportunity source, which means what is the source that happened that drove someone to start an opportunity and enter your pipeline? The reason that we're looking at this is because it's the biggest predictor and it's going to have the most correlation to sales velocity metrics. Win rates, conversion rates through the funnel, sales cycle lengths, even ACVs will be lower for some and higher for others. And then if you put those all together, you'll see how much velocity is moving through your pipeline over any given period of time between different sources of pipeline. And so different sources of pipeline could be, and we're going to combine it, there's two things. There's what the campaign type or the campaign, what they converted on, and then there's going to be the source or the channel. And they're actually two things. So it could be paid search, source, ebook download, campaign. And then those two things get put together and those become something that you look at. Or organic to demo request, or case study download to cold call, or I pulled them out of ZoomInfo to cold call, or I got them from content syndication to cold call. And so you can look, and then if you split those all out, this is the split the funnel analysis, but we're just talking through it in a little bit of a different angle here. If you split those all out, what you're going to see is that some win at a small rate and they have very long sales cycles, and others win at a very high rate and have way faster sales cycles. The reason being is because it's a surrogate for the intent of your buyer, and it basically can help you predict at what point, at how far done in the process a buyer is when they enter into your pipeline. Shorter sales cycles, higher win rates, they're going to be further down the process. Conversely, we have what people look at as multi-touch attribution, which is basically meant to try and measure everything, assign values to each touch point, and give credit to channels. But if you look at multi-touch attribution, you're not going to get the insight about where they entered pipeline, which is a huge, huge factor to optimize against, because like I mentioned before, you could have some sources of pipeline that convert at 0.1% and others that convert at 8%. And if you didn't have that insight, how would you know from your attribution software how to architect the mix? You wouldn't. You'd just be like, oh, Google Ads drives some revenue. Oh, this drives some revenue. So you actually need to look at it in separate ways here. For whatever reason, I just don't understand how people do not look at this in such a detailed way, because it will literally guide your marketing strategy. You can look back at where did the revenue come from and reverse engineer the buyer journey.